Hello, and welcome to the next dev session of the last day of Rezzed 2019. I'll be honest, I got told quite late that I was introing this dev session, and on the way, I was trying to come up with a little opening joke just to get you all in the mood. And then I got here, and I saw that the session was called Nutshots the Nazis, and to be honest, I don't think I really need anything else. But I would like to take a quick poll, so I'd like to see all your hands in the air if you've played a Sniper Elite game. And I'd like you to keep those hands in the air if you've ever shot a Nazi in the bollocks. Fantastic. Well, in that case, I would like you to all give a massive round of applause to the guys that made that happen. Rebellion, everyone.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us for this special chat with some of the people behind the Sniper Elite series. During the course of the session, we'll talk about the origins of the series, its evolution and its explosion in popularity. But before that, if you could just introduce yourselves, chaps.
My name's Ryan. I'm a lead designer at Rebellion.
My name's Tim. I'm the head of creative for Rebellion.
And I'm Jordan, lead level designer at Rebellion.
Okay, lovely. Also, brilliant photo, by the way.
Thank you.
There's so much to it. I'll have questions later.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. So Sniper Elite kicked off the series in 2005. What do you remember about the origins of the game?
Well, it's a long time ago now, but yeah, it initially started as a really much smaller thing. Back then it was touted for PC and PlayStation 2 and I think Xbox One at the time. Not Xbox One, the first Xbox.
Yeah.
And we were working with a small French publisher called MC2, and we kind of jointly developed it. They were looking for a military shooter, and we decided to focus down on something that had its own niche, very much different to Call of Duty, and even then there were things that were more run and gun in the action shooter genre, and we figured sniping is something that we always found compelling in those games. And it seemed worthwhile to focus down on that, and that there's so much more you could do with that. And that combined with a real passion for World War II history that a number of people in the studio had, and combining those things, we sort of evolved our way towards Sniper Elite and what it became.
So you were all experts. There's some very high-profile, notable history buffs at Rebellion, I think it's fair to say, but were you all World War II experts before, or is it something that you've really immersed yourself in since?
I couldn't claim to have been a World War II expert before. There certainly are people at the studio who very much are, including our CTO, Chris Kingsley, and obviously Jason Kingsley with his modern history YouTube channel and all the rest of it. He's very much into all of that stuff. And yeah, loads of people on the team are really into all that side of things. But for those of us that weren't naturally suffused with that kind of knowledge, we put a huge amount of care into the research into it, digging into the background. We work with historians and consultants and do plenty of field work and recce's to the actual locations to really try and make sure we're as true to history and authentic as we can be while still making a fun game, because obviously there is a balancing act there.
So related to that, one of the remarkable standout things about the game is the attention to detail with regards to ballistics. You've got very authentic feeling ballistics. So what lengths did you go to achieve that?
So, I mean, the ballistics is probably one of the key things that's sort of carried through the series from the beginning, and in many respects hasn't changed that much. The way we represent it has improved and got more sophisticated, but going back to the beginning, we had really accurate physics of how the bullet falls under gravity over long distances, how it is affected by wind and windage, and the player's own breath control and controlling their heartbeat and stuff are all things that set us apart and really add a real depth to the experience. And we've worked with actual real life snipers who have tell us how true it is to the experience, but also the picture you're seeing on the screen there is when we went to visit the Royal Armouries up in Leeds in their not the main museum itself, but like the secret underground bunker they've got, which has got like thousands and thousands of weapons from across history, and they've got a shooting range down there. And so we were able to talk to the historians there and actually use the actual like World War II sniper rifles and get a feel for how they feel and how hard they are to use and how heavy they are, and the kind of accuracy you can get with iron sights and with scopes and stuff. And it was illuminating and really, really cool. And yeah, they were very appreciative of the lengths we were going to get it all right as well.
I think that's one of the key things really we have with our weapons, is that we use real weapons from World War II. So we base everything on the actual attributes of that weapon. So the muzzle velocity, for example, is real. So that adds to the ballistics, because the speed a bullet comes out of a particular rifle will be recreated in the game, as well as all the information like the reloads, the kind of ammo it uses, and even down to the sounds, because so you get the very distinct sound of like the M1 Garand when it finishes and stuff like that. And all this builds onto the realism of the ballistics and how it feels to use the rifles. We go to great lengths to make sure we've got a huge variety of weapons, but everything is done in as real a way as possible. Obviously, there are caveats for things like the reload speed. For example, we've got a Nagant revolver, and that takes roughly about 30 seconds in real life to reload.
That's
so
a long time
when we
in a
put it in
game.
the game, we kind of have to go, well, let's speed this up a little bit. We do all the actual actions correctly, we just do it a little bit faster than you would be able to in real life.
It'd be interesting if we maybe went that far with our authentic mode sometimes. I don't know if people have patience for that, but I think there's a bloody-minded part of myself that would like to try it.
And I think you can learn quite a lot from just playing the game. Like, we have a massive variety of weapons to use that most people probably wouldn't have even heard of. And you can basically just pick up any rifle and you can learn quite a lot just by playing the game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other interesting things we saw at the Royal Armouries is, any given rifle, like we have, obsessive fans about like history and weapons and stuff that like obviously express their views on the internet about whether we've got things wrong or whether a bolt is like 1 inch too far to the left or, all that kind of detail. But going to the Royal Armouries, you see actually like on any of these known weapons, there are like literally dozens of variants of like how they're differently laid out and proportioned and used. Like they don't come off like the kind of manufacturing line that you expect an iPhone to these days. They're all like so bespoke in so many different ways depending on where they were made and when and how. So, that was in some ways comforting to us to know that any adjustments we have to make for game reasons actually are like, don't mean that we're being inaccurate.
Right. We've got a video to roll now, a quick short video. Before anyone freaks out, this isn't real. So tell me what's going on here. What's all this about?
So this is from one of our influencer events. So this is it's not a real skull, obviously, and it's using ballistic gel. And we had an event where we had people down at the tunnel in Dorset, and they were firing sniper rifles and getting that feeling that we had at the Royal Armouries and getting to see how they are to actually hold these, the Springfield, I think it was, they were using, and fire them at something that was reacted close to what we're depicting in the game. And it's great, recording that at slow speed gives us a lot of great reference as well for what we want to do in the game.
It exemplifies how like bullets don't just go straight through things and leave a nice little hole. Like, sniper rifle bullets will blow things up and rip them apart in ways that you wouldn't expect are quite so extreme.
I mean, the crazy thing is, at the studio, that's someone's job, to animate a skull exploding.
Yeah.
That's basically what he does all day.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
Keeps you sane.
So speaking of that, so V2 was the first game to introduce XRay Killcam, which has obviously gone on to be one of the kind of most iconic features of the series. What can you tell us about how that came to be?
So, I mean, the first game, Sniper Elite 1, we had the bullet cam itself, the slow-mo following of the bullet, which was an effort to sort of bridge that gap between, like, your experience of firing the gun and the fact that your targets were so far away, and we wanted to kind of make it more personal and dramatic in a way, and less like you're just shooting something really impersonal. With V2, we naturally were looking to take it up a level, and it seemed like the obvious thing to us to do was to track the bullet through the body, which is like the key part of what it's doing, and that led us to doing the XRay Killcam, as it's become known. And we had lots of debates internally about whether we should show skeletons or not skeletons, or internal organs or not internal organs, and a lot of it obviously we did do. And I guess one of the most obvious and slightly awkward conversations we had was, do we render testicles? Should we do that? Does that count as an internal organ? Is that too far? And we went this way and that on that quite a lot, as you can imagine.
Was there like a pro-testicle camp and an anti-testicle camp that were just at each other all day?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like that scene in Braveheart where you get the two sides of people coming in. No, it was... It was a more nuanced discussion than you'd actually possibly believe, but ultimately the somewhat bold decision was taken to leave it in, because it seemed at odds with the instincts of frightening numbers of people that when they're given a target and a gun, they want to shoot for the groin, and that's been proven to be very much the case.
We're just giving the people what they want. Of course.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Okay.
Well, even just today, I've been working on the stand over there. We've got V2 remastered. People can play, and the amount of people that are getting leg shots, and I don't think they're going for leg shots. It just seems to be an awful lot of misses, I think.
I did it when I played earlier. I must have missed by that much. I was so disappointed. So you're right. There is something about it. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the next video now. If you could roll that, please. The reason we chose to roll that video is just to talk about how the XRay Killcam's evolved and what you've done in subsequent games.
So, as we said, in V2, we took it to the level of the X-rays. In Sniper Elite 3, we introduced more detail and levels of detail to the layers inside the body, like muscle layers and circulatory systems, and obviously much more detail in the way the organs themselves are animated and the bones destroyed. And we also introduced it to explosive and vehicle targets as well for that. And then for Sniper 4, we added a whole host of new stuff.
So we got the shrapnel kills, as we call them, which were great. They were when the explosions go off, if they trigger a trap or it's from a grenade, or you shoot the obligatory red explosive barrel, that when they blow up, we get the X-ray from that, and you see all the shrapnel bits going through, hitting all the different parts of the body. We even had some conveniently left toolboxes on top of explosive boxes, which were great to see a spanner going through and ending up in somebody's brain or their, again, testicles, which was quite a satisfying shot. And then we also added our melee kills as well, which were really good. So Carl, armed with his commando knife, could go up behind somebody, and we'd, rather than just doing the normal slash throat or stab to the back of the head, you'd see the knife going through and going into the brain, which is gratuitous, but people seem to like it a lot and enjoy it.
Yeah, there was those are fun as well, because there was the kill cams, as you can imagine. Everyone wants to get involved in that part of the game, and practically every department, one way or another, does get the opportunity to get involved in putting forward ideas for that, whether it's on the special effects front or the animation front or the coding front. And when it comes to even the motion capture of them, obviously we have a plan for the kind of moves that we want and think will be cool. But then when we go to the motion capture with the actual martial arts combat trained and often military trained actors, then they'll be improvising moves and showing us stuff that would actually happen in war and stuff. And we come up with all sorts of crazy things, although I'm not sure that someone's skull would actually shatter if Carl slammed his hand into it in the way that happens in game, but that's one of my favourite ones.
Yeah.
It must be fascinating being exposed to people like that with entirely different backgrounds. It's here's a man that's an expert in stabbing people in the head. He knows all of the details about it.
Yeah, we actually had a meeting and a talk from an actual trained military sniper who we're not allowed to reveal the identity of
you can,
for
it's
security
fine.
reasons.
Oh, okay.
Right, well. But he was saying he was playing the game, and he was really amazed by how how closely we'd mirrored the experience of, like, you know, the holding of the breath and breath control and stabilizing your aim and the ballistics and everything. But he was actually quite shaken and like perturbed by our like X-ray Killcam and stuff, because he said, like, for him, the targets are so impersonal and so far away that like doesn't really feel much about it when you actually like take them out. Whereas for me, I mean, I know it's kind of gratuitous fun, but at the same time, I think it's kind of important that we, you know, don't shy away from like the actual like horror of what's going on when you take out a target. And yeah, it's interesting that someone as frankly terrifying as that guy was, you know, a little bit uncomfortable with what we were showing there.
I have to say, as a player, the games seem to tread that line well. Obviously, they're very violent, but there's, and I'm quite squeamish, like, as a person.
I'm sorry you're having to do this talk.
No, but but playing the games, it's satisfying, the feeling that I get. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe that's a bad thing, but there's a nice line that the Sniper Elite games walk, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we're always sort of careful to try and stay the right side of that line. I know it's not in a fixed place, but hopefully so far, well, certainly the number of fans and players we've got seems to suggest we're doing something right.
So Killcam was one of the things that kind of propelled the game to the next level, or the series to the next level. When did you like realise that it had got big, that it had captured so many people's imagination?
Well, yeah, certainly it was around the time of V2 where, yeah, it just started marketing itself, because, or like the fans were marketing it, because they were like posting videos online of themselves playing the game. And obviously we intended it to be like awesome and satisfying and really visual, but it seemed to coincide with that rise of people posting gameplay footage online of themselves playing, because it's both fun to experience and play and watch someone emotionally reacting to what they're doing and to see it at the same time. And it's, I think it's just a really fortunate confluence of events that turned it into such a shareable and streamable thing, which I think certainly did no harm to the success of the title and continues to do so. And it's, yeah, it's been an exciting ride.
I'm sure. That's good. So I was going to talk more about testicles.
That's fine.
That was the plan, but I feel like we've covered that quite a lot now.
Yeah.
It's interesting that these stats indicate that it is the hardest earned shot.
Yeah, those stats don't indicate the number of people that tried to go for the testicles.
It's a lovely slide, isn't it? Let's move on. Okay, so moving on to later games in the series, you relocated to Africa for Sniper Elite 3 and to Italy for Sniper Elite 4, away from the kind of grey, bombed out, more muted colours of V2. What was the thinking behind that decision?
Well, we very deliberately wanted to explore areas that, you know, in the same way gameplay-wise, we wanted to explore an area that is, you know, not focused on so much in games. And historically, we wanted to take the opportunity to focus on areas of the conflict of World War II, which was a world war and didn't just happen in like France and Germany, as is typically portrayed in popular media and even what you're taught in schools a lot of the time. And so, yeah, there were hugely significant theatre of war in Africa and in Italy, and I think it was really, you know, both, you know, fun and you know, enthralling for us to really delve into those areas and use it as an opportunity to, you know, bring some of those areas to people's attention that might not have otherwise been considered. And yeah, I mean, aesthetically, particularly in the case of Sniper Elite 4, I think allowed us to do something that wasn't quite so war-torn, because it was before the fighting kicked off there.
Yeah, I mean, so Sniper Elite 4 focused on the Italian occupation, and we got to explore a lot of different, very varied, lush Italian landscapes that were occupied by German forces. And it's an area of the war that most people probably didn't know a lot about, and we got to explore all of the historical aspects of that and the kind of untold stories of the Italian campaign.
And this image here is just sort of showing some of the early pre-production we did on, I think that's the first level in the game, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the level I worked on. It's the first level in the game, and this is the pre-production phase here. I mean, that could be a whole talk in itself, the level design of the game. But yeah, what we're looking at here is basically a top-down 2D map, which we do as the first part of the process, and a mood board to try and establish landscapes and basically what we want each level to look like, lighting and colours, that sort of thing.
Do you get like a nice holiday out of it for research? I really need to spend a month in Italy.
Not quite, sometimes, but yeah,
Disappointing.
not Italy, yeah.
So along with the location changes, obviously the size of the maps has increased greatly as the series has continued. What challenges and opportunities does that present to you as developers?
So basically, as our engine moves forward, that allows us to make technological jumps forward in terms of the size of the levels we're making. That, in turn, allows us to give bigger levels and kind of give players more choice about what they're doing and where they're going. The nice thing about the jump to Sniper Elite 4 was that it gave us the opportunity to give players the choice about how they wanted to take on their mission, essentially. We provided people with a sandbox, and that's kind of the approach we really enjoyed about making Sniper Elite 4. We give the player a mission and a set of objectives and let them pretty much figure it out themselves in any order they want. And yeah, what we're looking at here is kind of, again, early pre-production shots of production shots of the white box. And you kind of build these grey boxes, and then art goes over the top of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the challenges that we deal with as the levels become less linear, like Sniper V2s were not totally linear, but more linear, and but we've constantly been trying to evolve it away from that and make it more, up to the player how they tackle the mission, and that's obviously fun and exciting for the player and for us to develop, but it comes with its own challenges in terms of how we set up and choreograph the action, because when the player can go anywhere in any direction at any time, then we have to rely much more on making sure that the behaviors of the AI are much more kind of self-sufficient and emergent. Like, we can't just script an animation of a guy doing this as you come round a corner, because all the AI are active on the entire level at once, which comes with its own performance challenges as well.
I mean, that's it. We position the AI at the start of the level to kind of have their own job and own role almost. They're positioned around the levels in places that kind of make sense, and they'll probably be cleaning their weapons or just hanging out playing cards or something. And you'll come across these, and you can tackle it in kind of any direction. And players surprise you completely, and you can watch two people play the game and they'll play it completely differently.
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of makes it so good for people on YouTube and streamers and stuff like that, because they do get their own experience a lot of the time, and they'll do something that other people haven't seen with this emergent behavior that we have with our environments and the openness. It gets you something that feels much more personal to your playthrough, and it makes it much more exciting for you as you're playing through, and obviously for people to watch as well.
Makes it really, it's good viewing for us as well, to see people who haven't been through all the development, and naturally we see everything warts and all, every stage all the way along, and when people are just presented with the end result of it was always going to be that way, and game development is very much a process of iteration, and things are never quite settled until it's on the shelf.
Is it never frustrating watching players and you're like, no, you should go that way? Now you've given people enough freedom to explore.
Genuinely not. I mean, I love it when they just do something that you don't expect or didn't intend, but they have fun and the game copes with it, and you're like, great, that's awesome.
That's one of the advantages of going to sort of the more open sort of levels, because we have to make sure that all the AI and everything are robust enough to cope with all the situations, reactions. So when they do these things we haven't perhaps considered, then everything does cope with it and deal with it. And it's a nice surprise to see things like, oh, I'd never even think to take that guy out in this way or distract all these people over to this area. It's quite exciting.
Often people think you've set that up, you've designed it like that, and you can kind of take credit for that a little bit.
Can you tell me what's going on in this GIF, please?
Yeah, so this is basically the evolution of a level. So we start off like this. We basically build we build with boxes essentially. We establish scale and layout, and that changes kind of over the course of months. And essentially art goes in over the top of those boxes, and things move around kind of naturally as we test it. We get other people in the studio to test it and QA to give us feedback and that sort of thing. And yeah, this is basically the complete evolution of how we build a level. And
I think one of the interesting things that you can perhaps see on here, if some areas move, is that as more of the art goes in, we have to take more consideration into our sort of long shots we do, because the maps are much more open and big. We obviously let people get up to a lot of high places because that's where they want to go if you're going to be sniping. But sometimes going up to a high place and then suddenly being able to see this huge map isn't always great for performance. So we have to make sure that we arrange things in a clever way that it lets players do what they want to do, and also lets it run nice and smooth as well.
Hopefully the player isn't conscious of the cunning choices we've made in the
Yes,
background to make it all run smoothly and hide certain parts of the level from certain angles.
I mean, that's probably one of our biggest challenges, to be honest. That we always want, with a sniper game, you want to build the biggest environments possible and give people the longest shots possible. You want those kill cams to fly straight across the environment and kill someone right at the back of the level. But obviously with performance on consoles and that sort of thing, and you've got to account for people on lower spec PCs. We kind of to and fro a little bit and have to make sure we are kind of hitting those frame rates with how big we make the levels and what we show.
Yeah, but with every, technological console generation that moves forward, it allows us to do more than we did before. And, with all the tricks we learn along the way about how to do things better as well, it's fun.
You talked at the top about how for the first game you were working with a publisher. Obviously that's not the case for Rebellion anymore. You self-publish your own games. What difference has that made to how you work?
It's very freeing. It's awesome in that basically any choice we make is our choice, our creative choice. I mean, we like to think we know what we're doing with Sniper Elite, but it gives us the freedom to, like in the example for Sniper Elite 4, like we were coming up to where was the originally intended release date for it, but we took a look at where we were at, and we decided that if we gave it another 6 months, we'd be able to polish it and finish it the way we really wanted to do, and that's what we did, and so and that's where we ended up with Sniper Elite 4. And if we'd been working with a publisher, it's having worked with many along the way, it's a very different kind of relationship, and very rarely do you ever get the opportunity, even with negotiation, to push out those dates and things, whereas we're in a position where, because we're publishing ourselves, that's under our control. And it's not a decision we take lightly, because obviously it's a complex business, but if we need to and we want to and think it's the right thing for the game, then we can do that, which is great. But it also means that, while we have responsibility and control over everything, it also means that we have to own our own mistakes as well. So
yeah, I was going to ask, is it more pressure or less to be masters of your own destiny in that way?
I think it's different. I think, yes, it's more in some ways, but wouldn't have it any other way for sure. And yeah, the pressures of dancing to someone else's tune, having worked for publishers for many years, before, Rebellion managed to sort of pivot away from that kind of model and work under its own steam. It's much better now, for sure. Not to say I didn't have an awesome time working on all those exciting franchises before, like AVP and all the rest of it, but yeah, it's good times for Rebellion.
So you talked there a little bit about how you took a little bit longer to finish up on Sniper Elite 4, and it paid off. It was a big commercial and critical hit. What do you think it was that struck such a chord with players?
I think a lot of it was our real push to, as we've talked about already, opening up the levels and giving the players a lot more choice. In the very first level that Jordan worked on, we have a very short introduction section just to get people used to the controls and what sort of game it is. And then we sort of path you up, you go over a hill, and then suddenly players are presented with this huge vista and this big open level. And I think that's when you've got a nice tower there as well. And people suddenly realize, wow, I've got all this space and I've got a lot of choice to do. And right from that beginning point, you can go and do your little side objective things, or you can, even if you're lucky enough, actually kill your main target right at the other end of the map, right early on. And I think having that sudden openness and freedom really worked well with players and really sort of got a good strong hold on what
yeah, I think that example is an example of one where, had we been working with a publisher that was paying for and owning the IP, that might have played out differently, because in playtests we did find that people would get to that point past the tutorial and find it to an extent, like somewhat overwhelming, being offered up the entire island there. Yes, it was cool, and they'd sort of blunder around and try things and this, that, and the other. But like, you know, generally it was just like a bit of like, oh, I don't know what to do moment. And I think had we been working with another publisher, like we could well have been pressured into like hand-holding the player a lot more and making it more of a linear choreographed experience. But we were able to go like, no, this is what it's supposed to be. And it might be initially a little bit of a hump for players to get over, but like the reward is so much stronger and better if we just like give them the credit to be able to deal with it and experiment with it. I think I'd like to think that we're proven right in that approach.
Along with the kind of explosion in popularity, there was some other notable things that happened as a result of that, including this White House video. This is quite interesting.
Yeah, that was a weird one. Like waking up one day and seeing the news, and it's like Sniper Elite has been featured in like this video montage of video game nasties that was played in the White House to Donald Trump about like, I don't know why the downfall of civilization is down to us. I don't know, but like it was. Yeah, that was very strange.
Sounds like a fun day at work that day.
Yeah, it was kind of flattering, really. I mean, they do use some really cool clips of the game. But fortunately, I think virtually everybody with any kind of intelligence or nous was able to like bat that back and go, no, we're not the ones that actually go out shooting and killing people. That's something to do with actual real guns in the real world.
And I like to think Donald Trump played it.
Maybe.
All right, so moving on, you've recently announced a whole bunch of Sniper Elite games. It's an exciting time for the series.
Indeed, yeah. So obviously we're showing Sniper Elite V2 remastered here. Come play it downstairs in our room there. It's been really fun to like revisit Sniper Elite V2, which was the jumping on point for a lot of people in the series and has a huge number of fans. And yeah, we've souped up all the graphics and opened it up to more player characters. It includes all the DLC, and we've got a photo mode added in there as well. And it's coming out on Nintendo Switch, which is really cool. I'm very fond of my Nintendo Switch, and gaming on that has become very much part of my day, whatever I'm playing. And then we've got Sniper Elite 3 also coming out on the Switch as well, which both of them look amazing on that. And play really well, and using the accelerometer for the aiming and stuff is really cool. And we've got a VR game coming up as well, which is seems like a natural evolution for our immersive sniping experience. And yeah, I think people are going to be very excited about that.
It would be remiss of me not to ask about the next mainline game in the Sniper Elite series. What can you tell us?
Just watching our PR company sweat.
What I can tell you is that, like all the other Sniper Elite games, it will be a significant step forward for the series. I think the fans genuinely are going to really enjoy it and love it. I'm like genuinely really, really excited about what I've seen and know is going on like back at the studio and all the stuff we're doing. But I'm having to tread very carefully here because I'm literally allowed to say virtually nothing. I guess one of the things I can say is that we're always keeping a sharp eye on like forums and our fans and what they're saying about the game, and we send out questionnaires and with surveys and stuff as well. So we're always looking for feedback for what people genuinely feel about the game and what they want to see coming up next. And it's very gratifying to see that actually like the things we think we should be doing next and want to do next is virtually always like completely in lockstep with what like the fans and the feedback we get is as well. So I think people are, genuinely going to be pleased.
And the development team do love engaging with the fans as well. So we have a community Discord server people can join and talk to developers. We read our forums all the time. So if anyone has any suggestions, pop along and have a chat.
Yeah, we are listening.
All right, well, thank you everybody for coming, and thanks chaps for sharing your part of the history of the Sniper Elite series. If anybody hasn't yet, you can go and play Sniper Elite V2 downstairs, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.